U.S.-China cooperation. A friend of mine, Peggy Liu, is the chairman of JUICE, which is the Joint U.S.-China Cooperation for Clean Energy, which is why they call it JUICE so long. She has been working with the Chinese government to set up a mayoral training program where each year, I guess, a bunch of mayors in China go and they train in Beijing, kind of like a crash course refresher on how to be a good mayor, I guess, is in a nutshell. But what they've managed to build in that they didn't have before is now required curriculum to take a sustainability kind of course during that 1 week each year. And so when I asked her, I'm like, well, when you are at the province level and you're talking to these mayors, can you compare the whole talk about going green and actually having them do it? And she's like, well, it's really simple. They're just not going to get promoted if they don't go green anymore. Regardless of if they, really care or not about sustainability. If they could be the most corrupt mayor in the world, but they know that the government is aligning, like, their future prospects of getting into Beijing and the State Politburo, they better go that direction. So that's actually the easy part about China, like you said earlier.
Well, actually, interestingly, the event we had on Tuesday was specifically about sustainability in China, and that was a good presentation about something called the Natural Step, which is basically a program that fits around any mechanism, any framework that tells you what the boundaries are within which you can stay sustainable.
Right.
And they cover, obviously social issues, environmental issues, economic issues, and something else. But anyway, I've got a presentation if anybody's interested. Email me later. Sorry, there's one here, and then we'll take one in the back.
So it's me who's.
All right, there you go. You're not that shy.
Not really, but I was just joking to the person twittering with.
Okay.
That question was in relation. By the way, I'm Drew, and I'm a teacher.
Hi.
The question was in relation to Christine's earlier point about dispelling myths of things that were written, and the person who had tweeted me back but didn't appear upon your Twitter for was what myths were being dispelled, e.g. green issues, because that tends to be what is written.
So what kind of myth would you be taking out? You don't know. Well, you can ask them to clarify when you come back to it.
I'll do that.
There at the back, yeah?
Hi, I'm Andrew. I just wanted to ask about the telecoms companies in China and what they're doing to increase the internet connectivity.
Oh yeah, you know what? Email me, because I can point you to the person who knows how to answer that. I actually don't know much about the actual telecom. Yeah.
But I mean, it's a lot of it is now mobile. I think mobile is a really big, especially for rural China, where it's just impossible to get cables across, etc. But mobile is huge, and as Chinese young people upgrade their mobiles every 6 months or so, they all have internet, and a lot of applications, exciting applications, are now created in China for mobile.
Just
1 second, this is behind.
Sorry.
Oh, you want to?
I just want to add one point to that. That there's a massive amount of the fiscal stimulus money in China going into ICT, and within that into broadband development in several of the provinces. Huge difference.
I mean, for personal experience, even in second-tier cities now, internet is much more prevalent, and broadband is actually better and more stable than here. So that's just from places I go and see when I'm in China. How many had a point?
I guess that you are working with venture capitalists in the States, but if you have done the stores, you have been meeting probably the new emergent class of venture capitalists in China as well. How do you see that? Are there that many? Do they work the same? What do you think are the differences between the Chinese local venture capitalists and the American one?
Yeah, for me, I'm still new to it because my role in that is more on the cross-border identifying opportunities. I'm actually personally not a venture capital, I don't have a VC background, but I do know though a lot of these startups that we hear about, like Xiaomi or even I think 51.com, which is all these top companies. If you look behind it, there's VC money from Silicon Valley that actually is in there. So it's interesting, but I don't know much about the local Chinese.
So you have not come across to anybody from China doing the same role that those Silicon Valley VCs are?
I think there are, but I think there are. If you would know, you are a former VC.
Yeah, no, I mean, in fact, venture capital has developed very aggressively in the last few years. 98, 99, it started domestic firms, and then in about 2001, 2002, a lot of foreign firms started coming in, the Americans, the Taiwanese, and some Koreans. And then some of the better of the local firms started raising more money, some businesses which are angel invested, individuals, wealthy individuals, entrepreneurs who make money and redoing it, and wealthy Hong Kong Chinese family type money. And those businesses tend to grow on their own very rapidly, and then the VC businesses tend to be different again. They tend to be businesses that haven't had that sort of asset.
I think also that VC money from Silicon Valley tends to actually be real VC, as in looking for venture, looking for risk. And they also be targeted at tech startup.
Right.
In China, investment in general is not that high risk. People usually invest in what they know. They invest because they have the guanxi, so they actually can guarantee a market or a distribution or a profit. And so even VC there is not what we can think of here as VC.
And actually, the problem with a lot of the challenges when I ask different VCs is still transparency. It's the books, just even their process of contracts, it's just not that black and white. So it's kind of hard for them sometimes to make. It's like this, you gotta go by your gut, and then there's a relationship that can say, cause it's hard. That's the number one problem they say they have. It's just the transparency. And forget trying to take a company IPO. The woman on the panel with me at Harvard was from Dragon. I think it was Dragon Venture. The one that helped, it wasn't Q, I think it was not, it was QQ, no. One of these companies where she just said it was the transparency part was difficult for them to make a decision. That adds to the risk.
There is a good place to a venue to actually find out more about VC in China. That's the China Venture Capital Private Equity Forum, which was held in London for the last 2 years. This year, because of the recession, is not, but it will be again next year. So that's a good place where all of VCs and companies looking to raise money are coming from China over here, and it's a big one-day forum. Anything else? We're going to wind it down soon, so we can have some networking time, but if there's any final words, final questions. All the way in the back? James?
Question that was tweeted there, but just really to do with kind of you work within the kind of comes back to thinking about kind of social media. A lot of companies at the moment, aren't necessarily sophisticated enough even in the UK to kind of grasp the ideas of listening to social media, and even within the UK, obviously we have a far more open attitude to that, obviously without the same conditions that the Chinese are facing. So what's that kind of perception of those kind of insights that we can gain from monitoring that in China, and how's that working there?
Like, how are people monitoring social media? And
Yeah, it's more
It's influential.
oh, well, yeah, no,